good evening and welcome to our final installment of our Black Luminary in Neuropsychology series. My name is Dr. Courtney Ray. I am your host for tonight. I'm the president of Society for Black Neuropsychology. I'm so glad that you guys are able to come and be with us for our final night. If you haven't been here any night, then this is the night to actually come and hear what our interviewee has to say. We have a great treat for you this evening. We also have a special announcement at the end of our episode this evening. And so I want you to make sure that you stick around to the very end to hear about what we're going to do. It's something that I think that those of you who are watching will enjoy and feel like it is worth your wait. Right now, what we want to do is just remind you guys, if you have not seen any of the previous episodes, that you can go on to our or if you're watching on YouTube, you already know that we have all of the videos there. If you go to the playlist, you'll be able to see Black Luminary series in the playlist of all the people who've come before. So you'll see Dr. Norman, Dr. Stringer, Dr. Manley, Dr. Kelly, Dr. Ment, and of course, we hope that if you've missed any of them, you can go back, watch it again, share it, like, comment, and subscribe so that you'll be able to see all of the other great things that we're going to have. Not just this series, but we've been doing a lot of webinars that are helpful for our professionals and professionals in training, and we want you guys to be a part of that as well. So make sure that you subscribe so that you won't miss out on anything new. Also, make sure that you sub to our newsletter, our listserv. Go to soblackneuro@gmail.com, send us an email and say, I want to be added to the listserv, so you won't miss any of the announcements of events and upcoming things that we have in store. So as I said, this is the final night of our inaugural Black Luminaries in Neuropsychology series. So this is the first, but it won't be the last. And what we've been doing each night that we've had this is we've been talking about individuals who have gone before us, who have been trailblazers, and who have been mentors that have just paved the way in innumerable and immeasurable ways. And tonight is no different. We are going to be highlighting someone who has been an inspiration to several of the people who were our interviewees throughout our series. So his name has come up over and over again as a mentor and an inspiration, and his name is Dr. S. Walden Miller. Dr. Miller is, he actually was not only someone who was helpful to our luminaries who have been in these different interviews, but also he was prominent in the community and in helping the community to learn more about neuroscience and neuropsychology. And so just to give you a little bit of background about Dr. Miller, he was born in Des Moines, Iowa on March 3rd, 1937. He graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder. His dissertation was published. It was about the neuronal habituation and sensitization of rat brains. He was a graduate. He was a student there in 1974, and he went on to teach at the University of Utah. He moved to California in 1989, and that is where he was able to do so much of the seminal works that we know him from. He has been prolific in his contributions in neuroscience and neuropsychology, particularly for the Black population. When he started working in California, he was a clinical scientist, and he worked as a community collaborator with the psychiatry department at UCSD. That's where he began working with Dr. Bob Heaton and with Dr. Igor Grant. And one of the things that Dr. Walden realized was that African Americans were healthy and they were able to do complex computations and cognitive functions, but they were getting these false positive diagnoses for for derelict abilities. So what he decided was he was going to take samples of individuals from the community and try to figure out why it was that Black individuals who were healthy otherwise cognitively were scoring differently than people who were of a white background. And so he petitioned very long and hard with the NIH for grant support. And he was the one who was the first to collect a large-scale normative sample of data set of African Americans. He took a community-based approach, and he set up offices in the largest Black church in the region. And he accomplished this feat of being able to help gather normative data that was later compiled into what we have all often called the Heaton norms. But this was a collaboration with not only Dr. Heaton, but Dr. Miller, who was instrumental in making sure that this happened. These African-American norms are available through PAR today, and they are the basis for lots of research. And his research has spurred on the work of so many of the individuals that are now giants in our field today, including our guest today, Dr. Desiree Byrd. And she will tell you a little bit more about her personal connection to Dr. Miller as well. And we just want to highlight all of those individuals who have done work and have not necessarily gotten the credit for that work or hasn't had their name very widely publicized. I'll tell you this, trying to find out information on Dr. Miller was extremely difficult, even though so many people have said that he was inspirational to them, that they were able to gain so much from his mentorship. Not a lot has been publicly recorded about his life and about his biography. So if you do actually have more information about Dr. Miller, please do send an email to soblackneuro@gmail.com. We'd love to be able to know more about him. And if you also know of any other bright stars in neuropsychology that you think that are people whose names need to be heard and need to be known, also let us know about those individuals. As I began, I told you that our special guest this evening is Dr. Desiree Byrd. I'm so happy that she's able to come and be with us tonight. Hello, Dr. Byrd, how are you?
Good evening, good evening, good evening. I am here, I'm pumped, and I'm excited.
I know that you've had a long day. You've had movers, literally.
They're still here. Yeah, you may hear some bumping in the background. That's all right.
That's okay. That's okay. You know what? This is what happens when we have this work from home culture. So, hey, you have all sorts of things going on. Life still has to happen, right?
That's right. That's right.
So let me formally introduce Dr. Byrd. She's an associate professor of psychology at the City University of New York. Woo-hoo. She is at Queens College and the Graduate Center, and she has a joint appointment in neurology at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. She's a board certified neuropsychologist and is nationally recognized as a leader in the field of cross-cultural neuropsychology. Her research focuses on the roles of health disparities and cultures in the expression of cognitive dysfunction in the central nervous system, and her interests are in aging, dementia, HIV, substance use, and underrepresented populations. Pairing her research interests with dedicated training and advocacy to increase the diversity of scientists and research participants in neuropsychology is a privilege that she has proudly and humbly and enthusiastically devoted time to throughout her career, including being on the advisory board of SBN. She has authored over 50 peer-reviewed publications, 10 book chapters, and her research has been supported by the NIH and the Alzheimer's Association. She served in leadership positions in APA, in ACN, in NAN, and she is a fellow of the American Psychological Association and the National Academy of Neuropsychology and a sitting member of the National Institute of Aging-Neuroscience Studies section. She hails from Compton, California. Yeah. She's a West Coast girl. I actually lived in Compton for a while, for some time.
So you know.
West Coast, even though we know the East is the best, but
I will not go on record for that.
but it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
She was college educated in San Diego. She champions for higher education access. Amen. She is a foodie. She's a nurturer of children. She's a mother. She's a former Boy George fan who now grooves to Kendrick Lamar.
It's all here. We're here for all of it, right?
Yes. We'll accept you. We'll accept you anyway.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. Again, so I know that you are actually in the midst of a pretty busy season. As we read from your bio, you are a professor at City University of New York. Woo-woo. And so I know that you have a lot of different things that you've been doing with students, and this has probably been a pretty busy time for you as well. As we talked about, well, that was mentioned in your bio, there's just so much that you have done in this field that has been seminal work for the rest of us. And so let's dive right in. What made you want to go into this field in the first place? Out of all the things, you're clearly a bright and you are exceptionally talented woman. You could have done anything. Why neuropsych?
My goodness. The brain just captured me. So I entered college thinking I'd be a child psychologist because I had been working all during high school at the Watson Willowbrook Boys and Girls Club, and under the leadership of some people who spoke into me, right? Who saw some potential and said, psychology might be a good idea. And I thought, yeah, that's right. Maybe I will be a psychologist. So here I go. First, to go to college, I'm planning on being a child psychologist. And then I took a class on brain and behavior at San Diego State University with Bob McGivern. And my own brain just lit up. And so I started visiting his office and asking about, how do you know all these things? Like the stories about the connection between the brain and behavior. It was absolutely phenomenal. So I learned that neuropsychology was a thing. I first learned about neuroscience and thought perhaps I'd be a neuroscientist. I spent some time in a rat laboratory, and it only took one sacrifice. And those who know about animal research know what I mean about the sacrifice of the rats. But I said, actually, this is not for me. And that same professor, though he was a bench scientist, he introduced me to some human studies, and
sacrifices were not involved.
Right. And I just never looked back. So it's like a love affair with the brain.
Awesome. So out of all your many research interests, which one is kind of the one that speaks to your heart the most? Which one do you feel is like the one that pulls at your heartstrings?
Oh my goodness. Ooh, Courtney, you're coming with the question.
The last one, which was for you.
I don't know if I've done the one that will pull at my heartstrings the most, because I've been fortunate to really only be involved in work that I am passionate about. So I think if I were to have done work that didn't excite me, then my vita might be 3 times as long. But I've been so fortunate. It's too hard to say, honestly, because I've worked with samples of people, so to say, that have been ignored and excluded from studies a lot because they have, low levels of education, or they have substance use histories, or they have HIV, or whatever it is that traditional research just hasn't been interested, or they felt like the research would be a little too difficult to interpret. So I think without knowing it, and just because of where my heart is, that I have tended towards work with those samples. So to tell stories and to bring pieces into science that haven't been there before, but that are extremely important So I'm trying to rep for the people who haven't traditionally been represented. And so I don't think I have a particularly, favorite area of research just yet.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. What are some research projects that you're working on currently that are things that you are inspiring you right now to do? Way to draw.
Yes. So one study that will be starting up fairly soon in Queens. So I'm transitioning from just HIV research and moving back into dementia, which is where I spent my fellowship with Dr. Jennifer Manley. That's what got me to New York City. And then I never left, to my family's dismay. But so now that I'm at Queens College, I'm very deep in communities where people have immigrated and worked really, really hard to make a life for themselves and carve out all those pieces of their own culture that they can hold on to. And so I'm interested in the disparities, so brain health disparities in those communities as well. I was a little shocked to learn that, and I guess I shouldn't have been, but honestly, I hadn't stopped to give it critical thought, that immigrant health disparities are even worse than health disparities among American-born underrepresented populations, because there are language barriers, there are legal barriers, there's so many additional obstacles, and yet they deserve the same level of brain health that we all do. And so a study that my lab mates, students, co-learners that I'm doing this with, is to look at immigrant health disparities in dementia, dementia literacy in particular. So we're coming in without asking initially for too much investment from the community, just to come and spend some time with us, talk about what they know qualitatively about dementia, and then complete some questionnaires and learn about their medical accuracy. And I want to build from that some interventions and ways to be of service and help to these same families. So dementia literacy in immigrant families.
Wow. That's really important work. And as you said, those are kind of topics that lots of people in the mainstream or who have been in this work for maybe longer periods of time have kind of ignored, populations that have been ignored, and people and samples who nobody is really working with. And so that's really, really important. So what are the things that you have learned as you have been doing this research that you're like, oh, wow, this is something that's really interesting to me, or something that is really novel that you want to share with other people so that they can know that about this kind of research if they're interested in learning more about it?
So we're at the beginning phases, so no major findings yet, but check me next year because I'm certain that we will. But of course, we learn through every step of a process. And so I'm reminded of how important it is to be humble culturally, even if you're from a group that's different from, the mainstream. It doesn't mean you know everything about all the groups. And New York has literally all the groups from around the world. And so that humility and learning from people who can teach me, people who are in those communities, revisiting measurement. I'm reminded of how tough it is for our discipline, sadly, to produce measures that are psychometrically sound in these populations. So contending with the challenges of, do we adapt, the few measures that we do have? Do we take a chance and create brand new measures? So it's not easy going, but it brings us back to some of the basics. And it's reminding me of lessons I learned, in graduate school, just really basic pieces about how to do good science. Because that's my commitment is to the quality of the work, right? So to get it right.
Awesome. So you said that in addition to the research that you're doing and you're conducting in the community, you also are working there at Queens College. As we know, Queens is exceptionally diverse, as you've already said. What is the thing that drew you to working as a professor and teaching at a college? Why do you do that?
Oh my goodness. So, all right. So I'm a nerd. All right. I'm a nerd. Yeah. If I was a Boy George fan, clearly, like, all right, I own that. That's all right.
It's all
And
good.
and so the college experience was phenomenal for me. And that same professor, Dr. McGivern, who really introduced me to neuroscience and neuropsychology, he was an accessible professor. And he spent time with us. He invited us on a sailing trip one time in the San Diego Marina. And he talked about his summers, like how nice it was to have this flexible schedule as an academic. And I got to thinking, maybe I'd like to do that. And then I was a double major with Africana Studies, and I was fortunate to get to know Dr. Shirley Weber in California. If you don't know about Dr. Weber, please look her up. So I got to spend time with her and to see how she was able to be a force in the community, teach and mentor students, and actively like raise a phenomenal family. And so I thought, I think I want this kind of life. And that's what it was. I thought, wow, if I can have access to mentoring students, taking as many classes as I want, or going to lectures for the rest of my life, and being able to transmit knowledge and do for other people what people like Dr. Weber, Dr. Atkins, Dr. McGivern, Dr. Miller had done for me, then it's all worth it.
Awesome. Awesome. You have some fans in the comments section. First of all, your cousin was the first to give a shout out.
I'm not on YouTube, so I can't see. I'm sorry, y'all. Hey.
It's all good. Your cousin said that, I'm not sure if this is a guy cousin or girl cousin, but said, my beautiful cousin, love you. And they would have helped you move if you had. And then obviously, you know that your homegirl, Dr. Mint, who was here, our ultimate session, said that you are the coolest nerd ever.
My son wouldn't agree with you, but okay.
And then Emily Morris said that she agrees, and as a fellow nerd, it heartens her to hear one of her role models self-describing this way. So you are
right. That's right. Right on. Hey, Emily. Yes.
So tell me, you've named so many people who have been instrumental to you, and obviously you have an effect on other people. As we said, just the desire for teaching others out of your own love for learning has been something that's been passionate for you. What are some of the things that you do that you think a good mentor should do? What are some of the things that you've received from your mentors, and some of the things that you try to do for your mentees, that like quality mentorship stuff?
Yes. Oh, that is so crucial. And it is a wheel. I feel like I'm able to be a good mentor because I received good mentorship. And there is a range. Not all mentorship is good mentorship.
Okay. I think we got a little bit stuck there. Looks like you might have gotten frozen, but I heard you say that not all mentorship is good mentorship, and that is true. We have heard some horror stories, and we have also heard some stories that were heartwarming. So there's all kinds. Let's see if we can try to fix the glitch and get her back here in a second. As we're maybe working that out, just to read some of the other comments. Someone said that Dr. Weber, who was someone that Dr. Byrd mentioned earlier, is an amazing person. Someone else said, Dr. Byrd, you are nerd goals. So thank you for being a role model to the nerds out there, the blurds out there. Rian Baird Feldman said, one of my greatest mentors, good to see you. Like I said, Dr. Byrd, you have a fan base out there who definitely loves you, and you have absolutely made an impact to so many people. Ashley Torres also had a shout out to you, said it was an absolute pleasure to be your student. As we see, so many people have been blessed by the things that Dr. Byrd has done in her career throughout the time that, even though she was from the West Coast, coming to the East Coast, she has been able to help so many people. So we accept her as one of our own now here in New York. Anissa Moody said that she is a lifelong mentor indeed. Very great. I'm so happy to hear that so many people have been blessed by Dr. Byrd's life and what she has done, and being able to give her flowers while she's able to hear and see them. And that's the reason why we created this series right now, because so many people often will do Black History moments for people who have long passed. And it is important for us to recognize our ancestors, recognize those people who have done so much for us in the past. But also, it's super important to make sure that we are acknowledging the people who are in the present moment, giving us new innovation, who are blessing us with their mentorship and with their leadership capacity, and who are helping us in so many different ways. And Dr. Byrd is definitely one of those people. She's still, I think, trying to work out whatever issue happened just now, but that's okay. We'll continue on. We did have, as I said, an announcement that we were going to make at the end of our broadcast, but I think that we will go ahead and do it now as we're waiting for Dr. Byrd to come back on. So, like those of you who have been watching this know, this is our first ever, our inaugural Black Luminaries series. But I wanted to say that this was a collaborative effort from the executive members of SBN and the advisory board, but it was an idea that was birthed by our executive secretary, Dr. Kendra Anderson. And I'm going to add Dr. Anderson to the screen right now. She's not Dr. Byrd here. So, hi, Dr. Anderson, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Good. So Dr. Anderson, like I said, this was her brainchild to do this series, and we're so grateful that she did. So many people have said that they have been blessed by this series, and I'm glad that you were able to think that this was something that was important to be done. And so we did want to let people know that this is not going to be the last time that we do this. We intend to make this an annual event, right? So next year, it will be rebranded, and I will give you the pleasure of telling everyone how it's going to be rebranded as the new title of the series for next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be brief since Dr. Byrd was able to rejoin us, and so we can transition back. But because of the impact that Dr. S. Walden Miller had on 4 out of the 6 of the luminaries that we had for this inaugural series, we've decided to name the series after him to honor his legacy and the impact that he's had in both the community and neuropsychology that focuses on Black communities. So our hope is that next year we'll have this series, maybe not as many luminaries, but we would love to hear from you. So keep a lookout for a form that will be going out where we'll be accepting nominations for ancestors and luminaries to highlight. And we're hoping that we can make this a community effort to catalog our history in real time.
Yes.
And we think it's going to be an awesome project, and we're looking forward to being able to do this together as a community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Anderson. And so you heard it here first, guys. Next year, we will be having the S. Walden Miller Black Luminaries series in neuropsychology. So we hope that you will send in names of present luminaries who you want us to interview and highlight, as well as individuals who may have gone before, who are ancestors that you want us to highlight their history. Because as Dr. Anderson said, we want to make sure that we capture all of this information now, because so often the accomplishments of our community and the accomplishments of our people is somehow lost and buried in the mounds of information that are out there. And we want to make sure that we preserve that history and let people know that there are trailblazers who did wonderful things that they can look up to, who have gone before, and who we want to highlight and live in the wake of their legacy. Right now, it looks like Dr. Byrd has come back. It seems like her issues have been resolved.
Yeah, keeping it real. We're keeping it really real.
It's all good.
The move to the court. So I'm on my hotspot now.
You know what? Listen, just a quick anecdote. On Monday, I was teaching my class. So it's an asynchronous class it's a synchronous class online. So everybody's online. I'm up there teaching, and then all of a sudden my Wi-Fi goes out. Like, and I'm like, how do I get it back? And so I got on my phone, and so I texted students, like, I'm gonna get back, and I'm flipping switches and everything. So listen, it happens.
Yeah. We hustle strong. When you come from Compton, you learn to hustle strong. So the hotspot right here, I'm back online. Here we go.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Thank you for waiting for me.
No, absolutely. We need to hear what you have to say. So yeah. So we were talking about good mentors and bad mentors. So you said that not every mentorship is a good mentorship, but what are some of the things that do make a good mentorship? What are some of the ingredients?
Being responsive, because there's no checklist, right, that everybody needs, like this set of things. Respecting, just individual needs, and not power tripping. Realizing that what we're doing is developing colleagues. That's really, like, I love that my current students and former students are also my colleagues. So I'm trying to start saying, like, junior colleagues, because that's what it is. Anybody who can cross that line, get into college, get into graduate school, get into a clinical psych program, that's my colleague. So respecting, like, everything that they have to give, being transparent, recognizing a mentor's own weaknesses. One of mine is checking email. Those of you out in the internet sphere know that that's a weakness for me, but don't charge it to my heart, charge it to the calendar. And so
there's so much to do. Yeah.
Yep. And networking for the junior colleagues, knowing that one mentor can't do everything. And so when realizing what a person's passions or additional needs are, introducing them to other colleagues, even if it's not in response to a specific need, but just to lift them up, and so that they know more people and have friends in high places. So yes.
Awesome. We're going to be transitioning pretty soon to our question and answer. So if those of you in the chat have any questions for Dr. Byrd, please do write it in the chat. I saw some comments already. Go ahead and drop them either on Facebook or on YouTube, wherever you might be watching this. So now, there have been lots of people, I read some while you were gone, who just were praising the fact that you are a role model for them, that you've been a mentor for them, that you have been able to be someone that they could look up to. So in this sphere, especially being a STEM woman of color, there's not a lot of people who may look like you, right? And, I work for CUNY too, and CUNY the student body is majority minority, but senior faculty and administration is not. So, there's not necessarily always someone who looks like the student up in front of the class. And so I guess I wanted to ask you questions about that. Do you ever feel sort of a pressure, or maybe pressure is not the right word, maybe a obligation or responsibility to project something to be a certain way in order to be the person that those students see, because they might not see another person who looks like them? Do you ever feel that, or, does that cross your mind as, like, I have to represent for the people, since I might be the only person that they see like me. I mean,
Yeah, I get the question. Courtney, at this stage, like, so I graduated, I earned my PhD in 2001. So I'm 20 years into this and I'm seasoned. So I think that earlier on, I didn't have the passion and the courage, the level of courage that I see in a lot of my junior colleagues right now. And I might have been more conscientious, right? I was proudly educated in Compton, but I don't conjugate all of my verbs properly. I don't pronounce all of my words perfectly. And when I was a graduate student teacher, I was harassed about that. I never told anybody in my program about that. But I'm at the point right now, like, I know that I'm well educated. I know where my heart is. I know the price that my grandmother and my mother and my brothers and sisters and aunties and uncles paid for me to get here. So I'm fully here. And I'm so comfortable in my skin now that what you described isn't even a thought. Being transparent, being authentic comes naturally. And knowing what it does mean to be able to speak into those experiences. So when I teach classes, I say I'm first generation. I talk about student loan debt. I talk about I'm a single mother. I'm a single working mother. And so I put that all out there so that people can realize it's all possible. So I do live in that way. And I thank you for bringing that up, because it's important. And oftentimes I think we are made to think that we can't be authentic, right? That there's some standard that's so different from who we naturally are that we got to switch it all up. No. I was taught by Dr. Shirley Weber, who was in the classroom with a big afro and just came with it. And so I also have role models that demonstrated that. So, yeah.
All right. So, well, you brought it up. So this is a perfect segue into my next question.
Okay.
So Black women and hair, is a thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everything we do is political. Just living our lives is a statement for, people to say something, right? And so I'm sure that you are familiar with like the controversies that Howard selling their business students. Oh, they didn't want people to have locks and, lots of different things, right? And this is something that I had meant to ask Dr. Kelly, and I forgot when we were there, but I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
Did you ever, so with your locks, did you ever say or have any self-consciousness or feel like, oh, will people think something about me? Well, how long have you had your locks?
Yeah, that's critical. Yeah. So I went natural after coming to New York, right? And so these sister locks, thanks to Nicole Roche in Harlem, came before my son was born. Yes, of course. Where would we be without our sister stylists? Hello. Yes. So where's that research, right? That may be another study. The stories that those are the therapists in the community right there are the sister stylists and the barbers. But so I got mine like a year before Gregory was born. That's my son. So about 13 years. And so when my hair was straight, I processed, I had perms for a long time, but that was like my preference. I think my own awareness wasn't where it is currently. And so once that transition happened, I didn't have to struggle. It's easier being in New York, right? It's easier already having a PhD. For people who are trying to get back into the mix after, overcoming some struggles and things. They may be under larger scrutiny, but thankfully for me, it's never been an issue. But I connect with women everywhere. I love that women who are working as cashiers on the college campus will say, "Who did your, what you call those? Let me take a look at your parts," that type of thing. And then at conferences too, women go, "Oh," or I might see another sister who has sister locks. And so, it hasn't been a personal struggle for me, I think, because of just my own trajectory. But, big ups to the women wherever people are with wherever they land, with their hairstyles. Yeah.
No, definitely. Now, and like I said, and like you said, there's so many people who just do a variety of things. I've had my hair pressed. I've had my hair, in twists and out and, all kinds of different things. It's been lots of different colors. We are creative with the things that we do. And I just sometimes think that some of our students think, oh, I can't be this, I can't do this because it might deter me from being able to get these different opportunities. And I'm so glad that you're just at the point where you're just kind of like, hey, be you.
Yep. It is what it is. That's right. That's right. So, and long live the day when younger women won't have to have that struggle.
Right.
Right. That's a white supremacist, like ridiculous struggle that shouldn't even be a thing. So hopefully that day will come where that is the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Amen. Amen. Because it's like, hey, however you want to present yourself, you should be able to, and know that you'll be able to project that. So thank you for that.
Yes.
So Kendra asks, how does your background and knowledge in Africana Studies influence your work in neuropsychology now?
Ooh, good question. So my almost second major in Africana Studies and continued studies after that, right? Because the studies don't stop. Like we may earn the degree, but then we continue to educate ourselves. It helps me be more critical of the work. It helps me come to the table with the requisite background knowledge about so if we're talking about the influence of education on memory performance, I'm able to come to the assessment, to the research study, to the department meeting, knowing what Black people had to do to get educated, right? And how it's our people that pushed the public education system. That's how thirsty we were for education. So I think it helps me be a better scientist, and it helps me be certainly a better professor. Because our stories aren't integrated well enough. And there's so many pieces that I pull from that fuel me, that helps me to, persist when I do hit walls. Thank you, Kendra, for that question.
All right. Awesome. Someone else, Dr. Mitt, and said, could you talk a little bit about your work with Dr. Miller and his impact on our field?
Oh, so Dr. Miller is an ancestor who passed, and he was like a bonus, like an academic father to me. Having a Black PhD in neuropsychology to sit with, and he was so accessible that we could literally sit and laugh. He would laugh at how focused I'd be on food, and I'd bring him cookies from a particular bake shop in San Diego. He's like, Desiree, you killing me with all these cookies and this food, so accessible. And then we'd get into the work, right? So I got to know him very well, as I have other professors, and he helped to show me what was possible. His persistence with the African American Normative Project, which helped to set the record straight and allow Black people to be evaluated more fairly. And the way in which he went about that, I don't think community-based participatory research, CBPR, was a thing back then, but he just naturally knew what to do. And so it was wonderful to learn from and with him.
Awesome. And it sounds like you've kind of embodied a lot of the things that you learned from him in the way that you interact with your students, because the fact that you said that he was so warm and kind and genuine and authentic, that definitely shows in the way that you are, and in the way that many of the individuals, I mean, it's not just me, all these people who have.
Oh, I can't see them. Thank you.
No, definitely. And then another question that's very similar in that vein, how have you created a safe space in your lab? What have you done in particular to make sure that those students do feel comfortable with you? And how do you reconcile times when systems have worked against your efforts? Spaces.
We really real tonight. I appreciate these questions.
we told you, we're saving the best for last.
Yes. Okay.
No softballs tonight.
All right. I'm in the darkest room in the worst light, but I'm here for it. So what do? I try to create community among us. So I should say that having my own independent lab is something I'm still, that's a role that I'm still evolving into. I'm 3 years in and only in my second year of having students that I'm directly training in this particular way. And so being social, being honest, a lot of the things that I mentioned about my approach to mentorship are factors that I hope create safe spaces. Also having side conversations, so not leaving everything to the open lab meeting, but having individual meetings with students, and then being responsive when issues do come up that I suspect or that a student brings to me. And in terms of the second part about reconciling, doing my best, like keep making sure my intentions are pure, being frank, and brainstorming about ways to get around things, and then showing students like, this is the way that I'm doing this right now. You might choose to do something different when you become a professor. I have colleagues who would do something different. And so being open about these multiple pathways to reconciliation as well. And being public too. I like to involve my students as much as I am able in the process so that they're aware of like the whole picture, and then even more equipped as they inevitably come up against similar challenges in their futures.
So demystifying it for them.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
For them.
Yep.
We absolutely appreciate that. So if there are other people who want to actually become academics, Jeremy asked, what advice do you have for trainees who want to pursue an academic teaching career in clinical neuropsychology?
Hey, Jeremy. Well, I think that trainees, students who aspire to this, need to get with the existing organizations like the Society for Black Neuropsychology. The fact that we even have one, Dr. Miller would be so pumped to know that there is a Society for Black Neuropsychology.
Awesome.
But taking advantage of the training resources. So there are websites, there are YouTube videos, I know on your channel, the Division 40 of all the guild organizations, the Hispanic Neuropsychological Society, every single organization has something for students. So taking advantage of those things and then making yourself competitive to enter a PhD program. So getting as many A's as possible, getting research experience. I know that's hard, but trying to make that happen, even if it means taking a few years before you apply to get a job in a research role, you know, at an academic medical center, and continuing to read about and engage with the brain so that when you show up for interviews, you're fit for these programs, your passion, your love for this field comes through naturally.
Right. And so after, once you become a trainee in the neuropsych, in grad school, in that track, now the things that you should do if you're really wanting to be an academic after you've already gone to graduate school.
So we didn't create the rules of the game, but they are as they are. And the types of receipts that matter are publications. So demonstrating your ability as a scientist, applying for grants, seeking support in that process, of course. So demonstrating that your ideas are fundable, and then writing the papers. Team science is definitely the way to go. Dr. Rivera Monica mentioned during her interview how we've co-published together like extensively, and that's because it's fun to work with your friends and people who have similar levels of integrity and creativity. And so team science is a way that you don't have to do the whole study by yourself. Join with people or add a cognitive piece to a study that's already going on, and increase the network. And so for those who want to be a professor, it is all about demonstrating your ability as a scientist. So the publications and the grants, and then sharing your science. So dissemination, giving talks in the community, certainly giving talks or poster presentations at professional conferences.
There you go. Here's another training question. Someone asked, I'm currently looking into clinical neuropsych PhD programs to apply to this coming fall. What's something that mentors are looking for in candidates, especially with the impact of COVID-19?
I think it varies by mentors. I'm impressed when students are able to make it to an interview, right? Because many people apply. I think 80% of people who apply to a clinical psychology PhD program don't even get an interview. And it doesn't mean that they're not qualified. I know good and well how qualified many of them are, but it's just so competitive. But in terms of what mentors are looking for, I look for persistence, which is demonstrated again just by you even being selected for an interview, being flexible. That's what COVID has forced a lot of us to do, right? We've had to figure out new ways of doing a number of things. So that creativity, I look for passion and being able to sense what a person is really, what fuels them when I read their personal statement. So don't be afraid to show yourself in the personal statement. It's nothing to me. It's kind of boring to just read what you have done because I can see that from a curriculum vitae, right? I want to know about what fuels you. So those are some of the things that I think mentors are looking for in trainees.
Well, interesting that you talked about the things that, fuel you. Here is a question from Annie, and she asks, as students of color, we're often told about how we should do clinical work, what professionalism looks like, what not to share with patients. How can we bring our own culture, our own sense of selves into our clinical work?
Well, Annie she comes with the question. She is such a champion for the people. She should be on the Luminary in the next series. But that's tough. And so you may be more limited as a trainee when you're very closely supervised, but you're only a trainee for so long. And once you become a professional, then you decide how you present in your clinical practice, and you'll attract or detract people along the way. Shout out to a former junior colleague and current mentor and colleague to me, Anissa Moody, who may be on here. She put out a Soul Sensations meditation CD, right? Wow. So and she's a clinical psychologist. And so there are ways, my sister Wendy Williams, talks about being Black all the time. You're not going to catch her on a day when she's not talking about being Black and what the Black experience is. So as far as I'm concerned, the time is now for us to validate the trauma of racism, the harshness of living through health disparities and racial injustice. I might have some new conversations with the supervisors. My friend Steve Verney down in University of New Mexico in Albuquerque, he has a cultural supervision group just for these types of issues. Maybe if another supervisor doesn't think it's all right, you could go to Dr. Verney's cultural hour and talk about it, right there. So it does require some creativity. And if nothing else, do what you got to do to get the PhD and then create your own practice.
Okay. All right. Absolutely. Hey, I like what you said. Do what you need to do, and then you can do what you want to do.
Yeah. You don't want to compromise yourself, completely. But sometimes we've all had to make some changes just to get through and to cross that finish line.
And that's real. That's Aditya asks, well, first, thank you for being such a role model, Dr. Byrd. To all of your Queen College students, they're watching and representative. How have you reconciled the ups and downs of the process approach in the advent of a push for new community-sensitive norms?
The process approach. Aditya is a deep thinker. He's going to be one of the baddest neuropsychologists once he crosses that finish line. So I wonder if he's thinking about the Boston process approach, about paying attention to how people approach tests, not just what score they obtain, but community sensitive norms. Aditya, there's arguments on both sides. There are arguments against the norms. There's a push for more community sensitive norms. I think we have a lot of work to do in neuropsychology. And So I don't fully understand your question, but I'm here for follow-up conversation later.
All right. Well,
All right.
Aditya has access to you at Queen.
That's right. Yes.
So there we go. If only everyone should be so lucky. And
Oh,
we're so glad that you spent your hour here with us. We have a couple more questions, and this question I think is one that we all want to know and that we are dying for you to express to us. Thank you, first of all, for showing up always. What quote or proverb embodies your leadership style?
Mnet. Uh, wow. That is such a good question that I wasn't prepared for. But one that I've adopted from a new favorite colleague is not in neuropsychology, in critical psychology at the Graduate Center, Dr. Michelle Fine. She always challenges people with, to whom is your work accountable? And I feel that that is true in the classroom, right? And I talk to my colleagues like, we don't have jobs if students don't go to college, right? I am accountable to students. In the research, I'm accountable to the people who are volunteering, making themselves vulnerable so that science can advance.
Yeah.
In my community with my block association, I'm accountable to my neighbors, right? So staying grounded in my I'm accountable to my family members. And so I push to show up because there are people who, you know, who can be lifted by a single thing, you know, that I do. And so I don't ever want to be centered on myself. Like I'm accountable like to myself so that my career gets to this place and that place. I'm accountable to my community.
And so someone who is accountable to your community, someone who's accountable to the people around you, and someone who pours into others on a daily basis in a variety of settings. And this one wants to know, how do you take care of you? How do you take care of yourself? Work-life balance a lot. So how do you?
Oh my goodness. Yes. I don't always do it well. But I feed myself with my relationships with people. My mother always gets on me, you're talking to too many people, you're doing too much. You need to sit down and watch Judge Judy, you know, and but I love my friends, my family. And so spending time with them. Here recently I started working out, and that is phenomenally refreshing, of course. Feed, you know, just trying to take good care of myself, taking a break when my body is done and I know I need to just watch Queen Sugar. Then I close the laptop and I watch Queen Sugar on Hulu or Power or whatever, you know, it is. And so taking walks and mostly connecting with people that I love and the children that I enjoy. That's one of the hardest parts about COVID, honestly. And it's been a struggle because kids don't connect well. And I'm connected to a lot of kids. I have godchildren, not grandchildren, godchildren and nieces and nephews all around. And I miss being able to hug and play and, you know, run with them, but just for a time. So connection is the way that I take care of myself most.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you were willing and able to connect with us this evening and for us to get to know a little bit more about you. So many people have talked about how you have made such an impact on them already. And I know that just getting to know a little bit more about you and hearing your insights and just your passion and authenticity today has been something that has been a blessing to all of us. And thank you so much. You have been a phenomenal person to end on our inaugural series. Thank you so much for tonight.
Ashe, thank you, Courtney, for your vision for this organization and for this legendary opportunity to be on record telling our stories. So thank you to you and all of your team that made this possible.
Well, thank you so much. Now, this concludes our final installment of our inaugural Black Luminaries in Neuropsychology series. I do want to just bring Dr. Anderson up one more time to say thank you to her for all that she has done in helping to put this together. I want to also thank the rest of our executive team for what they have done as well in making sure that we've communicated and just try to make this something that is helpful for all of you. Our audience, it would not have been the same without you giving your comments and your thoughtful questions so that we could all be able to get more insights into those people who are our guests. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Continue to tune in to not just this series. Like we said, we'll have it again next year, but to the other things that we're going to have. On Sunday, we will be having a webinar for individuals who are still seeking a match for fellowship. Last night, we had a session with Dr. Icahn from APIC, as well as other panelists, Pam Dean from EAC, talking about all of the different things that you need to be concerned about if you are someone who did not match in phase 1 of internship. And so on Sunday, similarly, we are going to be having a special webinar for people who may not have matched for the postdoc match. Don't despair. There is a lot that you can still do. And so we want to give people practical tips. If you know somebody who didn't match for internship, tell them to watch the webinar from last night. If you know somebody who did not match for fellowship, tell them about our Sunday program. It will be at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. Thank you guys so much for spending your evenings with us all of this month. We really do appreciate it. We look forward to next year for the second installment of the S. Walden Miller Black Luminaries in Neuropsychology series. This is definitely be something that we hope will continue on for years to come. Thanks so much, you guys. Have a good night.